Hello, everybody, and welcome to the next episode of these transmissions special episodes. This is Darryl, Cybertronian Beast, once again, and today we are talking to Mr. David Wallace of TFNation, and we are going to be talking to him about a bunch of different things, maybe some Transformers, but we are going to start with comics because we've got comics in common, and we going to spend some time on comics because we've got some opinions. This is an interesting one for me because David and I we really don't know each other that yeah, at all. So this was an interesting conversation for me. Uh, I wanted to get to know David, so I reached out and said, "Hey, uh, want to talk?" And he's like, "Yeah, sure." So yeah, this is a fun conversation, and we found some common ground. You know, we all know Transformers is pretty common. We can get a conversation going on that. But I wanted to see, do we know anything else about each other that is common? So yeah, a fun conversation between Mr. David Wallace and myself. Let's get into it.
Oh, it's one of those ones. There's no
Yeah.
plan.
No plan. We're gonna crash a bus here and see what comes from it. Um, so yeah, you know, I've known of you for a few years now, and I've known that you are, you're the like the man behind TF Nation and stuff like that,
That is a giant over exaggeration. There are a lot of people watching this now going, "No, he's not."
Well, you are, as everyone who's involved with a convention knows, it takes a small town to run a convention. So
Oh,
you know,
yes.
anybody who does something with TF Nation or TF Con on this side of the pond, it's something, you know, it's very valuable. So I want to touch on TF Nation, you know, a lot because you've got your show coming up this year, and you've got a new mini show that you just announced recently that you've got that
Yes.
coming,
Mhm.
and I want to get into that too. But you know, I want to jump into a little bit other stuff too, because obviously we share Transformers as a passion. But you
Transform
know what?
Transformers. What's that?
But you know, I want to touch on some stuff too, because obviously we only kind of know of each other through this hobby, but you know, really, you know, what other things are you into? What do you do? What do you know, what's your day to day? Because, you know,
Oh,
that's, you know,
you want to know? You actually want to know about me? Oh
yeah,
God,
yeah.
right? Okay.
I want to get to know you because, you know, we on transmissions have wanted to get over to TF Nation for a number of years now, and
Mm.
it's really just the distance. You know, if there wasn't this stupid body of water in the way, we'd have been there already, right?
Exactly. That's it. Pangea was a good idea. We should have
It
stuck
was
with that.
great. It was
You know.
great. I don't walked already. It was
Yeah.
yeah. But yeah, so I mean, if we had if we'd had a way to get over there, we'd have had a bunch of conversations, and I'd have been able to meet you already. So I've been curious to find out, you know, who you are and what's the man, you know, behind the con all about, because I've gotten an opportunity to talk to Colin, the guy behind TFCon over here, a
Hmm.
number of times, and I'm like, well, who's the guy running? One of the guys running TF Nation over there. What's this guy's deal? So,
Blind luck is what it is. Yeah. Okay. Where do you want to start? Like,
well, what's your day to day? What do you do for what do you do for fun? What do you do for, you know, work? What do you do for that kind of stuff?
yeah, sure.
What do you
So,
do?
yeah. So day to day, I work ironically for an airline. I work for British Airways, and
Okay.
my role is I'm despite my cheery disposition, I'm the guy who calls you up when you tell us you're sick.
Oh,
And I'm the guy who goes like, Are you really sick?" No, I don't. Like, yeah. So that's what I do basically on a day to day basis. I work in an office, and I look after people who aren't feeling well and support them and help them get back to work and do all of that. That is the 9 to 5 of it.
All right.
It's very dull for people, I'm sure. Like, nobody wants to hear about the ins and outs. In fact, I can't even really go into the ins and outs. It's all very private. But yeah,
Of course.
spend all of my day sort of really doing that, and then when I come home, like, that's when the fun begins. Whether it be reading comic books, or playing with Transformers, or performing in local theatre companies, or I suppose spending time with my wife.
I'm glad
That's
she's on the list somewhere.
yeah, she is. Somewhere on there. No, I mean, she is very much at the top. I don't. As time has gone on, I've found myself less and less inclined to like watch TV and stuff like that. I very rarely. Not that I don't have the time. It's just I find that I don't have the inclination for it anymore. That said, if something takes me fancy, then I will watch it. Generally, it's mostly driven by the girls in my office who are like, "You need to watch this." Why? Last week's one was, "Why have you not watched The Boys?" And I'm like,
Yeah.
I didn't watch The Boys because 10 years ago I read the first trade paperback of The Boys and I found it just distasteful. And that's why I didn't watch
I
it.
can see that.
Oh, it's not. And then I proceeded to tell them what happened in the comic, and they're like, "Yeah, that's not what happens in the TV show." I'm like, "Right, okay, that's fine then. I'll start watching The Boys then." Any time that a publicly traded company such as DC Comics turns around to the owner of a comic and goes, "You need to take this away. Like, this is so bad. We don't even want to own this. Take it away." Like, that's what I always say about The Boys. It's like, everybody's like, "The Boys is amazing." I was like, "Yeah, read the comic." It's like, it's so bitter. But yeah, like, so that's basically what I do. Like, when I'm not working, I'm reading comics, mostly DC comics. That's my brand. That's what I've been a fan of, like, ever since I got into the world of comics. And I guess with comic books, it's much like anything. It you almost have it like a football team. You've got that team that you support, despite the
Yeah.
fact that they don't seem to have any luck whatsoever in the movies. But and the comic books are all just baffling. The decisions that are being made in the comic book industry at the minute are baffling. But never mind. That's
Yeah, I mean,
different.
we can get into that a little bit because I'm a Marvel guy.
All
And
right, okay.
I have been a
As are
Marvel
most
guy.
people. Yeah.
I've been a Marvel guy since I started, and I got into comics around 12, and really was just enthralled with a lot of the Marvel characters. And I keep a pretty close tab on my comic book collection because I use an app for it. And I've got over 9,000 comics, and I think I'm sitting around 800 DC comics. Like, it's a very small percentage
Yeah.
of what I own is DC. But yeah, it's an interesting kind of dynamic because it's weird. I do read some DC, and I've been really enjoying some of their Black Label stuff recently. Nice House on the Lake, I've really enjoyed.
Not read that yet. It's definitely
It's
on the
yeah, it's
list.
really
Yeah.
quite good. I've enjoyed that. And I do buy some just for the covers and stuff because I really like some of the artists that they have. But yeah, it's odd. I've always found, and it's weird because the writers are they're just contract workers. They jump over, wherever. But I've always, in the back of my mind, I've always thought of DC being more wordy than Marvel. And yeah, and I'm definitely not a fan of wordy comics. So when I look at a DC book, I'm like, that's more reading than the Marvel one. And it doesn't make sense anymore because they're written by the same people generally.
Hey, you know what though? It's true. I don't think there's enough conversation around pacing in comic books, like how to actually. I think Frank Miller said it once, and I thought this was great, is that it takes a really clever writer and artist to be able to control pace in comic books. It's not like a TV show where if they want you to focus on something, they just leave the camera staring at it,
Sure.
Like, whereas comic books, it's much harder because you're the one that's dictating it. And I think when you have a wordy comic book, when you have a comic book that is just a text dump, it takes it out. I think it really does. Ironically, I was just recently, I was going through, bringing it around to Transformers, I was going through some of the old Dreamwave stuff, and War and Peace issue 6. There is so much text in that book that you can't see what art has been drawn on the page.
Yeah.
And I was just like, but you're absolutely right. I think, if you go back to comic books that were written in the 60s and the 70s.
Oh yeah, I have a bunch of them. I don't.
They
even
are, yeah.
you have
your, in one panel, you have your caption telling you what is happening in the panel. You have your thought balloon, which is your character thinking what they're going to say, and then their text balloon with them saying what they're going to say.
Yeah,
and you're like, God, I'm so glad that comics evolved past this.
Yeah, the newest thing now that I've found myself not caring to read has been, and I know you probably aren't reading it, but because it's Marvel, but it's the Hickman X-Men Run, and he has done something where he's got his own kind of like world going on, but he'll do the comic pages, and they've been fine, but then interspersed between the pages are these prose pages where he'll just do this breakdown of what's going on in the story and like a background of like a certain situation or character, and I'm like, there's that. Nope, not reading that. Right, so I'll skip that whole bit, right, an entire page of prose. I'm like, okay, well, that probably didn't mean anything, or I didn't need that information. And the same kind of thing happened with the like some of the James Roberts stuff in the Transformers books. He would, at the end of the book, he'd have like 2 or 3 pages of prose. Never read any of it. Like, I'm not picking up a comic book for pages of prose. If I wanted prose, I'd read a novel, right? So I wouldn't read any of that stuff.
There was an issue during Grant Morrison's Batman run. It was just building up to Batman R.I.P. Where it was a comic book it was a prose comic book.
Wow.
And it was really good, but whenever I go back and read that stuff, I usually because it reintroduces his Joker that he sets up for Batman R.I.P. And so it's quite important. But at the same time, yeah, it's that I don't read books, novels or anything like that. I just don't have the time for it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I totally understand what you mean. But Hickman's X-Men run was dogged by all sorts of the worst editorial decisions, though, wasn't it?
Well, it's still going. It's going on, right? It's still
even
going
though
on
he
right now.
even though he did what, like 3 issues or something like that.
He's got I mean, I think it's at 12 right now, and then he did the Powers of X and then House of X or something like that. I mean, he had a whole bunch of big crossovers and stuff, but he built this kind of like new world and stuff. It changed the X-Men for the now, I guess. I
know I'm supposed to be the guy getting interviewed here, but I like talking about this stuff.
Yeah, no, and that's what the whole thing's supposed to be.
Do you find the X-Men break Marvel?
How do you mean break?
So I grew up watching the X-Men cartoon.
Sure, yeah,
and I love the X-Men cartoon.
Yeah.
I liked the first run of the X-Men movies. X-Men 3 notwithstanding and all of that stuff.
See, I love that movie. I love X-Men 3.
I've seen it once when it came out, and that was it. But I've often thought that the concept of the X-Men doesn't work when they're in a world that is populated by superheroes. So we know the X-Men were done as an allegory to racism.
Yep.
But they don't really work, because if we were to apply them in the real world, let's say, and here we go, two white men talking about racism. Watch this go south. Exactly, right? Yeah. So let's assume that it is an allegory for racism.
Yeah.
The argument is, we should be, one of the big things in X-Men has always been the mutants must declare themselves. Okay, that's fine. The Registration Act, that's one of the big things that, you know, was always part of early X-Men and things. And if you were to apply it today, it would basically be, do you want this group of people to be registered? And in your heart of hearts, you want to say no, because that's a horrible thing to say. However, if you were to apply it in the real world, what it is this group of people all have powers that can totally destroy a city.
Yes.
Maybe I'm getting older, but those people need to be registered. You know,
yeah.
It's like, what if everybody called David in the world was suddenly given a machine gun? Nobody else in the world could have anything else. Only Davids could have machine guns. And they carry them with them all of the time. And they never run out of ammo. Would you want all Davids to be, you know, I think you would. So I think what I'm trying to say here is, in a really bad way, they don't work as an analogy for what they were supposed to be. And the whole thing of hating mutants is completely broken when everybody loves Captain America, but Captain America is much more dangerous than, say, I don't know, Jubilee.
Right. Well, there's this spectrum of mutant abilities, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, Jubilee has her sparkles, right? Which I didn't understand how that got her on the team, right? Right. I mean, yeah, sure, it's useful in a way. How does that get you on the damn team, right? But what I can see the allegory for racism, because it makes them different and thus hated. That's where it stops. The powers part and how they are used, that's then a whole completely different aspect of it. You can have your Registration Act, and the way I see it, with all Davids getting machine guns, that's a good you know, way to do it. But I think there's a suggestion, or there's a real world one where, you know, if you have somebody who's I think it's a black belt in martial arts, they have to register their hands or something like that. That's a real world situation.
Bruce
right?
Lee, Lethal Weapons and all of that
right
stuff. Yeah.
So, you know, they have to register that stuff because they are now capable of inflicting harm with their hands, right? So that and this is all being said of somebody who's not a black belt in any situation, and this is all stuff I've heard through. Right? So, you know, I could just be talking out my ass, but I've always felt that the mutants in X-Men, they exist in a world that could totally be separate from the entire Marvel universe, but also brought in when necessary, like when plot needs them, right?
Yeah.
There's been shit that's happened in the comic books, you know, because they were in New York too for quite a long time with all the other mutants, or with all the other superheroes. And shit went down, and I'm like, well, why isn't Spider-Man here? Where the hell are the Avengers? Where's the Fantastic Four? Like, why aren't they all kind of coming into it? Like, this is some big stuff that's going on, and nobody's coming out. Nobody else is seeing like half the city just got destroyed. Why aren't the Avengers coming in? Right?
It's the great shared universe problem, isn't it?
Yeah. So
it's why I always detest it whenever Transformers specifically shares a universe with something, because it just doesn't make sense that these things would be allowed to just knock around.
That's right.
Especially if you've got, in the Marvel comics, it was the 616 universe for like 5 minutes before they shunted them off.
Yes.
Whenever G.I. Joe is around, it's like, well, hold on a minute. You've got this international group that's designed to like stop threats. Like, why haven't they just taken the Transformers down? It's I think the X-Men, just like Transformers, I think they just would work so much better in a world that does not have superheroes. Where it is just the natural evolution of human beings.
I like that idea. I like the idea also where they could possibly share the world with the Inhumans, where there's this mist or what, I don't care. Something happens. something
happened with the Inhumans, and it was so bad.
Yeah.
They rewrote it for the Ms. Marvel TV show.
Yeah,
because they were like, this is rubbish.
That show was horrendous. Absolutely horrendous. I don't know if you ever saw the 6-episode, Inhuman show, but it was the worst.
Oh, I thought you were talking about Ms. Marvel.
No, Miss Marvel is great. I like I like that show.
I must admit, I did not watch the Inhumans.
No. First episode, with Medusa with her crazy, hair that's alive, right? They're like, this is gonna cost a fortune. Shave that head. I'm like, okay. Like, within the first few minutes, her head gets shaved, and I'm like, that's budget. Like, that's a budget decision. Terrible.
It's always, especially with the DCCW shows, which, in fairness, with the exception of Superman and Lois, I haven't watched in probably half a decade now.
Yeah.
But you could always guarantee that at some point in the show, something would happen where they lose their powers. Purely because this stuff is expensive, so we have to write, and it is. But no, I've not watched that. So one other question about Marvel, which I always like to talk to Marvel fans about. DC is synonymous with reboots.
Oh my god! Okay,
even though
let's go.
even though it's technically only had 3 real ones, but it's synonymous with it. Do you think time is running out on Marvel before it has to do it?
My god!
And here's why I say it. Captain America and Magneto are aged out of books now. They have to come up with a really dumb explanation. And Captain America and Magneto are the 2 key ones where their origin story has to be what it was.
Mm-hmm.
Also, Spider-Man is now how old? 35? Going on 40? Whereas if you talk to people and they say, what is Spider-Man? They say, Spider-Man is a teenager. Spider-Man has not been a teenager in comic books for, nearly 40 years now?
Yeah.
Is Marvel in need of a reboot?
So Marvel keeps doing something that I think is really interesting with their characters. Now, when you talk reboot, they do something where they restart their series, at one. And that's something DC doesn't do that often, which I really admire for them. But Marvel does it every other week, and it drives me insane.
Yes. Get
but
those
then they
issue
got
1 numbers.
yeah, but then they got these legacy numbers, which still kind of filter in, and they're I'm just going to comment on it really quickly because it's going to happen with Amazing Spider-Man really soon. They just restarted Amazing Spider-Man, so they've got their issue 1. But at issue 6, it's going to be legacy number 900. So another big issue, right? And I'm like, it's only issue 6 of this, but no, wait, it's issue 900. So we've got to do a big double issue. And I'm like, fuck off, you guys, with these reboots. So anyway, that's said. But Marvel does something that I find is interesting, where they will keep their OG characters around and still do stories with them, but they will now then introduce a new crop of characters to take on that mantle. You've got Miles Morales, who is now a teenager. You've got Ironheart, who is now a young girl. You got Ms. Marvel. You've got I mean, Thor really doesn't have one. It's but they've been doing this quite often where they're introducing these young ones. Wolverine got X-23.
X-23, yeah.
She's getting older. Yeah, I mean, this is something that they keep doing, right? And I think DC is trying to do this. They've got
DC did this in the 70s.
Right. They had the Super Sons, right? They got the.
I mean, how many Flashes are we on to now? Like, Jay, Barry, Wally, Bart. It's,
But they keep coming back to the original one, right? Or not, sorry. They keep coming back to Wally, right?
Well, no, Barry's really been the Flash for the last decade or so, since John's brought him back.
Okay.
So Barry has been the main Flash. However, now Wally, for the last year or so, has really stepped up. But that's only because DC editorial hate Wally West for some strange reason and turned him into a murderer. And I'm sick to death of, and this is a completely different subject altogether, but I am sick to death in comic books of people, and Tom King is a nightmare when it comes to this. And this isn't a rag on Tom King. I enjoy some of Tom King's work. I loved his Wonder and Vision series. I thought that was phenomenal. But I hate at the moment this need of writers at the moment to try and disassemble a character. And the problem that they do is they do this and they don't put them back together again, And I always think to myself, if you're going to talk about a book where your main goal is to strip the character down, figure out what works, and put them back together again. The blueprint for this was done decades ago, and it's Frank Miller's Daredevil. A fantastic series of books. And, in that, he completely tears down Matt Murdock, but then puts him back together and makes him leaner and better and, a much better version of the character. Whereas I think writers now, they just want to tear the characters down and they don't want to put them back up again. And it just really annoys me. And I don't even know where this point came from or why I'm on this point. I don't remember now. But yeah, but no, I was asking you though, do you... What were we talking about? No, we were talking about new characters in DC. See, this is what happens. I get sidetracked. I ramble.
No, that's okay. So, but what I was saying is that I do see a little bit of what's going on with what Marvel's doing over at DC, because they've introduced Damien Wayne, and they've got what is it? Superman's son. Shit, I forgot his name.
Jonathan Kent. Yeah,
Jonathan Kent. Right. Yeah. So I mean, they're doing it a bit. I don't know DC well enough to know if they're doing it anymore with any other characters, but
yeah, they have been. The problem DC have got at the moment is that they're doing it and have been doing it with DC really for the last 5 years, where they've been introducing new versions of classic characters. The problem is, as I said, is that we already established versions of these characters in the 1970s, sometimes
Yeah.
in the 1960s, because DC was built, unlike Marvel, was built on the notion of sidekicks.
Yeah. Sure.
Whereas Marvel wasn't. This is new territory for Marvel, the sidekick. And I know that Ironheart and Miss Marvel, they're heroes in their own right. They're not sidekicks, but
Yeah.
they're the next generation.
Yeah.
Teen Titans has been around with DC since the 50s or the 60s.
Yeah.
So when DC turn around and say, we're making Superboy, we're making Jonathan Kent, Superman and Lois Lane's biological son. Great. Oh, now we're going to age him up. So now he's going to be a teenager. Yeah, but we already have Connor Kent. So now we've got two. Oh, yeah, but Connor Kent's going to be around. We're just not going to mention him. And we're just going to do random things with him. And he's never really going to do anything. And you're like, right, well...
So we're just going to forget about him.
Yeah, Damien Wayne. Damien Wayne was 10 years old when he met Batman. And he was absolutely dangerous. Now, he's about 17 or 18. 16, 17. They've sort of aged him up in the same way that they've aged up John Kent.
Mm-hmm.
But we have Tim Drake. So, like, and this is, I think, the problem that, the new Wonder Girl, Yara Flor.
Right. The Brazilian.
Brazilian one, yeah. We've introduced a new Wonder Woman. Yeah, but we have Wonder Girl. And we also have Donna Troy. So we're now on the fourth Wonder Woman. Oh yeah, but we've also got Nubia, who's another Wonder Woman.
This is the problem that you have when your comic company is 80 years old, right?
This is the problem that you have when your comic book companies are run by corporations that are using it as an intellectual character farm because they want to make money, because they don't make money in the comic books, so they'll make money on TV shows. So, and you cannot tell me that one of the biggest problems that we have right now in comic books is comic book creators coming in with the sole intention of creating a character that they think is going to be popular, that is going to get a TV show.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's something I've noticed.
You lot gave us Brian Michael goddamn Bendis.
I mean, you stole him from us.
No, you can have him back. Like, trust me, you can have him back. Like, he came into DC Comics. He came into DC.
I've heard about all this from Jeremy. So
he completely ruined Superman. We were literally in the midst of a Renaissance golden age of Superman, where they've finally given him something. He ages up Jonathan Kent. He busts so wide open the secret identity. And then he creates, when he's on Justice League, a character called Naomi, who is what I guess is his attempt to recreate the Miles Morales magic. And less than a year after she's introduced, she gets a TV series.
Yep.
And it gets cancelled after one season.
Yeah.
Explain this to me. Like,
so for me,
sorry,
it's a lot of the WB or the CW kind of the effect of that. The CW shows, like you said, are kind of garbage. I don't particularly like them. There's so we can pivot into some of the movies and TV show here a bit, because I think, like you said, I think a lot of this is being created specifically for the screen. I started buying. I haven't actually read it yet. I started buying Batman at issue, I don't know, 85, and I was like, you know what? It's looking like it's going to be a good run here, because I heard that this Joker War was coming, and I heard that this other series was coming, and I thought they're introducing this new character, Punchline. I want to be in on this too. So I'm like, okay,
I'm sorry.
I'm getting in on the ground floor on this character. So but then I'm reading these, I'm buying these books, and I'm like, okay, well, here's Punchline, and I did get her first appearance, so I'm like, cha-ching, and then and then all these other books started coming out, and then I'm like, oh, well, now this one has a first appearance, and then an issue, two issues later, another first appearance, and then another first appearance, and I'm like, how many freaking first appearances are they going to put in this Batman title? Because I just got to keep buying it, because I like to collect first appearances, and every other book had a first appearance in it. I'm like, I got to stop here, because first of all, I haven't started reading this damn series yet, and now I'm at 30 books and I haven't started yet, and yeah, so it's got like Clown Hunter or some shit like that, I think was another one, and I'm like, what is happening with this series? And I'm like, are all the major titles like introducing first appearances? Because I kept reading in these these comic apps and stuff like that, they're like, Superman's getting this character, and I'm like, oh, I'm not buying Superman now. Like, what is happening here? So I think that you're onto something here, that they're just throwing out first appearances here because there are people like me that are idiots that are buying these books just for first appearances, and then they stick with it because they think, well, this issue's the cameo, this one's the first appearance, then there's a second appearance, then there's a cameo for this next one, and then there's a first appearance here, and then there's this cameo, and then there's, I'm like, Jesus, what? So
I think we're definitely on the cusp of, and this is what I really hope. We know for a fact that both DC and Marvel's editorial is dreadful at the minute. Too many people having to look after too many books, and writers basically being given carte blanche, because they are literally, it does feel like they're just throwing stuff at the wall. And as you say, with Batman we had Punchline. Oh, it's the new Harley Quinn. Okay, now we've got Clown Killer, and then we had Ghosts.
Yeah, whatever the hell his name was.
Yeah, all three of these characters created within basically a year of each other, all by one writer who is now off the book. I guarantee you that Chip Zdarsky's taking over Batman.
Yep.
I guarantee you will probably not see them again. As somebody who's gone through the cycles of DC Comics, Batman has always had a massive extended roster. He, not even including Robins and stuff like that. There's characters like Huntress and the Birds of Prey, and so many of these other characters, and they get cleared out, and these writers come in and they try to add these new ones in, and they just don't get picked up. And I'm sat here going, can we maybe just have a Batman story that features, I don't know, let's just pick the Penguin as a bad guy? There's a reason these villains are legacy, because they're good. But yeah, it's unfortunately Batman has been in a slump for quite a while, sadly. But I'm hoping Chip Zdarsky.
Chip's fantastic.
I've heard nothing but good things about him.
Yeah.
So I'm really looking forward to it. If nothing else, he's reestablishing, by the looks of it, Tim Drake as his Robin.
Cool.
Which is great, because Tim, ever since Damien came on the scene 15 years ago almost, like, Tim's just been out there with nothing. They've now turned around and said he's bisexual, and suddenly everybody was like, oh yes, Tim Drake exists. And it's like, okay, well, cool. now do something with him. So yeah, fingers crossed.
Well, let's pivot into the movies now, because I've had the theory for a while now that there's a reason that the DC movies are kind of crap. And
I will fight in regards to some of these and not others.
so the my my theory is and a lot of people have made this comment, is that the DC movies are too dark. That they've gone in a direction of, the Frank Miller universe is our universe, and then we're going to live, and all of our movies are going to be in this universe. The first Wonder Woman movie was fantastic.
Yes.
And I will defend that one. The second one was hot garbage.
Very polite way to play it. Yes.
But there, you can see that they're trying to do, like, the second Wonder Woman movie was them trying to ape a Taika Waititi type of Thor Ragnarok style, and it didn't land. But my theory, or for the DC movies, and I've talked to Jeremy about this, who's he's as big of a DC fan as you, and I think you guys could have a fantastic conversation about DC. It'd be hilarious because he shares a lot of your opinions. But I think they need to back away from Superman and Batman. What you see in a lot of the Marvel movies is they established the MCU with Iron Man. What they could have done, or should have done, is establish the DCEU with Batman or Superman. I don't care, pick one, right? But Batman seemed like the better one because his movies were better. The Christopher Nolan Batman movies were amazing. So you establish the DCEU with Batman, and then you kind of back away from him, and you use him like MCU used Iron Man as just this touch point in each of the other movies to say, oh yeah, they're in the same universe. So he shows up in a Superman movie, same character, same actor plays him, right? You get him to just kind of put on the costume and show up, or not put on the costume and just have, Christian Bale walk into the room and say, oh, hey, whatever, and I'm here, and this is the same universe, and you're like, holy shit, it's the same universe. And then then you get your little your eureka moment, and then you can continue on. But it can't be that dark, right? Gotham can be dark. Gotham's a shithole, right? So be dark in Gotham, but the rest of the world, like Metropolis, should not be dark. It's a gleaming light of the world, right? It should be a really happy place. And and then as far as the other worlds go, there really hasn't been they really haven't expanded out, right? They've been hyper focused on telling Superman and Batman stories, and really, as far as somebody who doesn't read DC, enough's enough. I am done with Batman stories right now. Like, I have the Batman to watch. I have not had a desire to watch it, right? It's sitting here waiting for me to watch it, but I am so done on Batman stories, right? So, give me somebody else, please. Give me somebody else to watch.
And that, if you look at the comic books that are being released by DC, at least a third of them are Batman or Batman related books.
Yeah,
because Batman is the only thing that sells for DC. I genuinely like Man of Steel and Batman v Superman. Like, genuinely like them as movies. I like Zack Snyder's Justice League. I like the first Wonder Woman movie. Here's the problem that I see as: Marvel did something that nobody else has ever done and has ever been able to do since, which is create a cinematic universe. Star Wars couldn't even do it. They couldn't even do it with Star Wars. They're trying again, but they're taking it in a much slower direction. to expand the universe out.
Yeah.
But when Star Wars couldn't do it, DC had no hope of doing it. And if you look back at those first 5 Marvel movies, so the first 2 Iron Man movies, Captain America, Thor, and was
the
that
first
it?
Avengers, I think.
Then Avengers, yeah. So in 5 movies, they set up their universe.
Yeah.
But the smart thing that they did was that by the end of that, you knew what the big threat was, you know, and then everything else they did was the road to Thanos.
Yeah.
And that was the genius part of it. You know, there were so many times I remember thinking to myself, Guardians of the Galaxy, that's it. That's the first Marvel movie that's going to bomb.
Yeah.
No, it didn't.
No.
Like they hooked into something. The problem with Marvel was that it then just became the same movie again and again and again and again. Everybody is funny. Everybody has Iron Man's personality, you know, and you went on and on and on. And now we're at a point where there is no big threat. And people still show up to watch these movies, but we've not really had, thanks to COVID, we've not really had the chance to see what a post Endgame, you know, cinematic universe looks like. I'm sure Kevin Feige is going to be very clever and stuff like that. You know, it would not surprise me if Galactus shows up very shortly as the next big threat. But I feel like DC should never have tried to chase the MCU. And I think that was the problem. You know, you had directors who wanted to do one thing, you had studio heads that wanted to do another, and they clashed. You know, I think the biggest problem with superhero movies is that everybody wants to be Marvel and nobody else can be. I don't even think Marvel can be Marvel at this point. You know, what is an MCU when Thor doesn't show up anymore, when Captain America doesn't show up anymore, where Iron Man doesn't show up anymore, and where, you know, I don't know whether or not Doctor Strange will be back for another one. Who knows? Is the Marvel Cinematic Universe's destiny now just Disney Plus shows? I'm going to be very curious to see what happens, because sure, they've got X-Men and Fantastic Four, but we've seen X-Men movies before. We've seen Fantastic Four movies before. We've not seen a good Fantastic Four movie, but you know, I guess we'll wait and see.
Have you seen the new Doctor Strange movie?
No, I haven't.
Okay.
I have not watched a Marvel movie, and this isn't like a slight on Marvel. This is just lack of interest in watching movies in general. I don't think I have watched probably since Endgame.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah. So no, I watched. I can't remember Black Panther came out before or after. And
the first Black Panther, it came out before.
Has there been a second one?
No, there is one coming.
I thought I'd missed a Black Panther too.
No, yeah. So there is a second one coming. Yeah. So
that was not a great movie either.
Black Panther, it was okay. Yeah. I liked it. It was good.
It didn't stick the ending for me. I thought Killmonger was right and Black Panther was wrong. I was kind of like, I'll be perfectly honest. No, that wasn't. No, that was it. This is the problem. I have a hard time keeping everything straight in my head.
There's like 30 movies now. So
the problem that I had with Black Panther was that the entire point of it was that Killmonger won because he in an arranged contest he defeated Black Panther and became king. And then Killmonger dies, and suddenly Black Panther becomes the leader again? How does that make sense? Your entire movie is based around the fact that there is a tradition of how to become king, and you've just gone, nah. I was like,
It just
no,
reverts to what it was. Yeah.
That's not how we have a king and queen. I mean, they're not fighting gladiatorial pits either, but
I think they should.
well, I think most people do. But yeah. So we're 40 minutes in, and Transformers, that's a thing, isn't it?
Yeah. So I as a Marvel person who's seen a bunch of seen all of the movies, I will tell you that Eternals is terrible.
Right. Okay.
It is not a great movie. And at the theater, I almost fell asleep. So
Okay.
it's a tough one.
Yeah, I'm not going to subject myself to that. One last question that I have then for you as a Marvel fan.
Sure. Yeah.
Do you like the Spider-Man movies that Marvel have done?
The Tom Holland ones?
Yeah.
I do. I like them a lot. They're fun. It puts him back
Wow.
as a kid. It puts him back as a young person. Yeah.
I don't like them.
No?
No. I'll tell you why.
Yeah.
Because I always feel I have to. The first movie, he is completely ineffectual and only survives that movie through pure luck. He never wins once. It's always a random shard of metal is in the right place at the right time. And I'm like, okay, that was all right. I do not like this new version of Mary Jane. I do not like this new version of Flash Thompson. I know why they're like that. I know why they're not Face the Tiger, you've just hit the jackpot, and why they're not complete pricks.
Yeah.
As Flash and Mary Jane should be.
Flash is still pretty much a prick.
Yeah, but he's a nice prick though, isn't he? Like, they're still friends. He's not beating up Peter Parker.
Yeah.
The second movie is an Iron Man Wake movie.
Mm-hmm.
Again, you could take Spider-Man out of that movie and put in any other character, and it doesn't matter. The third movie, the best of the three, all it did was leave me with the sense of, oh man, I really want another Amazing Spider-Man movie. Because which one was it? Andrew Garfield is great.
He was fantastic.
His movies are dreadful, but he is my favorite Spider-Man.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that last Spider-Man was great, but it was only great because it brought back all of the great things that worked in the previous Spider-Man movies.
Mm. Yeah, the dynamic between the three Spider-Men I thought was hilarious. The two older Spider-Men, their dynamic between each other was fantastic. Just
absolutely, I thought, and they've obviously, and also as well, I feel like the ending of that third movie, where they have to retcon Spider-Man out of the MCU, and the entire time you're sat there going, because of contractual obligations to Sony,
mm-hmm.
is just a little disheartening, because it's not, we have a plan for Spider-Man. It is, no, we're going to take those rights back now, thanks Disney. So you need to come up with a way to not have him show up in your movies anymore. Thank you very much. Until we come to our next agreement. And so I feel like, and I know I'm in the minority here, but I just feel like those movies never landed. I still, to this day, do not feel like we've had the Spider-Man movie that we deserve.
I mean, I would argue Spider-Verse is probably one of the best movies that we've had in a long time.
That's phenomenal. No question there. Yeah.
Spider-Verse is absolutely just wonderful. It's absolutely wonderful.
Somebody who knew nothing about Miles Morales going into it, other than the fact that he was the other Spider-Man,
mm-hmm.
I thought it was wonderful. And he's an interesting one, because he's a character who has seen so much great success outside of the comic books, but his comics, what I've tried to read, never resonate with me. I thought he was brilliant in End of the Spider-Verse, and I thought he was brilliant in the Sony, the Insomniac games.
Oh, the game. Yeah, great. Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
But every time I've sat down and tried to read a Miles Morales comic book, I'm just like, this is not good.
You just have an aversion to Bendis then.
I love Ultimate Spider-Man.
Oh, okay.
I read it as it was coming out. Granted, I only got up to about issue 100, and by that point, I was kind of like done with it.
Oh man,
because
those books got good.
those books were coming out like bi-weekly. I don't know how. What's
Mark Bagley?
I don't know how Bagley was drawing. I don't know what he was snorting to get himself to like draw as fast as he was. But that Ultimate Spider-Man stuff was incredible.
Yeah, it has that series. So it goes into I don't remember what issue. I think it's like 120 or 150. I don't know what issue it starts at, but it goes into a volume 2, and then eventually stops at 160. But
that's when they kill him.
That's when they kill him, and it's one of the best endings of a book I've ever read. So it's like 5 or 6 issues that they take for the death of Peter Parker, or the death of Spider-Man, and absolutely wonderful. Just one hell of a ride, and it's super emotional and really well written, and then you can go into there's a mini series that you can read, and I used to own it. I sold it for some reason, and I've tried to find it again, but it's called Spider-Men, and it's for, I can't remember who goes to what, but one of the Spider-Men go to the other's universe for this mini series, and it must be Peter Parker goes to Miles Morales' universe, because he's swinging around in his costume, and Miles sees him and confronts him and says, "What the hell are you doing in that costume?" Right? And he's like, "What are you talking about?" He's like, "You don't wear that costume. That is in bad taste. Nobody puts that costume on, right?" He's like, "Peter Parker died for saving us, right? You don't wear that costume, right?" And I'm like, and he's like, "You know who I am?" He's like, "No, you're not Peter Parker. Peter Parker's dead, right? And you take that costume off, right?" And he's really pissed off, and I'm like, wow, like the whole world knows who he is, and they all honor him, right? And I'm like, that is cool, right? So yeah, I was like, that's really neat. That's cool.
I thought Ultimate Spider-Man, I think, is fantastic. The problem that I've got with Ultimate Spider-Man is that if you read those early books, probably the first 70 or so issues or whatever it is, it is all about, for a lot of it, is all about loss.
Yeah.
It's the ultimate teenage book. They right at the beginning, they lose Harry. Harry comes back. He loses Uncle Ben. They lose, he thinks he loses Eddie Brock. It's not so much of a loss, to be fair. They lose Gwen Stacy. His death of Gwen Stacy is dreadful. I will say that. And the whole time, Mary Jane is just like, you need to stop this, because I'm going to lose you. And to know that is actually what happens means that I have never been able to sit down and read the end of it. I just can't do it, because I like Ultimate Spider-Man too much as a character, as a modernized version. Bagley's art and Bendis's way of writing teenagers feels real. It's difficult. People now talk about how it's difficult because there's a lot of stuff there that hasn't aged well. There's an awful lot of times when Mary Jane and and Peter will basically make the joke that Flash is gay. You know, it is how kids talk. It's very much of its time. But I love those characters so much. Those are my definitive versions of, because that's my Spider-Man that I read.
Yeah.
And I just can't bring myself to finish it because I just don't want him to die. Like it's a weird thing. Like I don't think I'll ever do that. I'll probably, I'll reread the first 100 issues or so again and again and again, and maybe I'll finish off to 150 or whatever it is. But I cannot bring myself to read it because I don't like modern day Spider-Man. I don't like the fact that he's 35 years old. I don't like the whole marriage thing.
I mean, he hasn't been married for I don't know how long.
Yeah, that's over a decade now, isn't it?
Yeah.
But therein lies the problem. I think with Marvel is, Marvel. If Marvel embraced the ultimate concept and just came up with a way to just keep Spider-Man at 16, that's what I want. I don't want... I mean, at this point now, Spider-Man has been a billionaire.
Yep.
And he's lost all of his money. He's been into space. He's been dead. He's been a clone. He's he's had his powers. He hasn't had his powers. He's been married. He hasn't been married.
He's been Dr. Octopus.
He's been Dr. Octopus. Yeah, like, all of this stuff. And I get it. It's comic books, but for the love of God, like, just... I think now more than ever, I think people are starting to cotton on to the idea that these characters should be timeless. They should, and granted, not everything exists. Time has a funny way of messing around with things. But, Superman is still at his best when he is the big blue Boy Scout. Batman is still at his best when he is the creature of the night. Spider-Man is at his best when he is 16 and dealing with you cannot read Stan Lee's original first 40 issues of Spider-Man and not come away from that going, this is the most perfectly formed comic book out of the gate. This is the most perfectly formed comic book character ever. So just give us it back. Like, you know what I mean? But I don't know. Shall we talk about something else? Because, like, I feel like
you got you seem to have some Transformer figures behind you. What's all that about?
Oh yeah. So there was this thing in the 80s. It's a bit of a dumb thing, really. Giant robots out of space.
Yeah,
and miss a lot. Yeah. So Transformers.
Yeah. So you watched them as in the 80s, then I assume. Then, yeah.
Yeah. Born in 82. We didn't get them here till 85.
Okay.
So, like, I remember, first Transformers I remember sort of playing with would probably have been sort of the season 3 characters.
Okay.
Ultra Magnus. I remember having a Blitzwing, all of that stuff. But for me, the big thing was I remember where I was when I first watched Transformers the movie. Now, I don't remember Transformers before this, but obviously I had a good knowledge of it because I cried when Optimus Prime died. Now, our version was different to the American version, so we had Victor Caroli on at the end, because by the time it got released over here in the US, they were already on the path to bringing him back, and so our movie ends with Victor Caroli saying, "And the greatest Autobot of them all, Optimus Prime, will return," and that's the end of the movie. And I remember turning around at my parents and saying, "You can't turn the movie off. Why not?" Because it says that Optimus Prime is coming back. And my parents are like, "Yes, but not in this movie." Like you need to understand. So you know, like that was it. Like Optimus Prime was my favorite. Like everybody, got a bit older, fell out of it. You know, ran the gambit. It went through, you know, Transformers, Turtles, Power Rangers. Went through all of that stuff. Never really loved anything else as much as I loved Transformers.
Mm-hmm.
Went to school, realized girls were a thing. You know, and then early 2000s, you know, heading into university, finally had some disposable income. And it just so happened that that was when Dreamwave hit and the whole 80s resurgence thing hit. The Takara book collection started coming out. Robots in Disguise started hitting. I went back and rewatched Beast Wars and Beast Machines, looked at the stuff that I'd missed. eBay suddenly became a thing. And off to the races I went, and have been a fan ever since. And have spent more money than I care to admit, and more time than I would care to admit, indulging in the hobby. And, you know, it continues to this day because, you know, just the other day, this little fella showed up.
Holy cow.
And he's very nice.
You guys got stuff before we even got it.
Oh yeah, like I don't know what
Wow.
is, I don't know what's going on. In Demand Toys, one of our big UK sellers, they just got this new universe pack, this new Bumblebee pack with Goldbug in, and I'm like,
so that you guys got that in already. Wow.
like it is literally on its way to me as we speak, because I was like, you're putting Goldbug into.
Yeah.
So here's the thing, like, I don't know, and I'm sure everybody knows this, but just in case you're young and naive and stuff like that. For American audiences, most of whom, I usually say that the big divide between the UK and the US was that the US was primarily cartoon, whereas the UK was primarily comic. So for a lot of the US fans, Goldbug is just that other version of Bumblebee that appeared in one episode of Transformers. But in the UK, Goldbug was huge because Bumblebee was Goldbug for an awful lot of the UK run. So he's massive in the UK. And the idea that Hasbro are going to like shove him in a random box set that's going to have it was a bit like Fangry.
Yes.
Nobody in the US probably cares who Fangry is, but in the UK it was like, it's Fangry. Like, you know, So yeah, we've been on a weird trip lately. Yeah, I got Motormaster, I got Blitzwing, that box set. I've ordered it. It should be on its way to me shortly. Yeah, so it's a good time.
So what?
And Motormaster is excellent, by the way.
Touch on that for a bit there, because you mentioned it quickly, but why do you think the is it just the fact that the comic landed so well for you in the UK?
We had a couple of issues. One was that we didn't really get the cartoon to any real extent.
Okay.
Let me give you an example. We used to have a kids' TV show during the summer holidays. So in the UK, we get 6 weeks summer holiday. Right? Now, I might be misremembering this slightly, and I'm sure somebody will correct me here. What they did during the summer holidays was they aired 5 minutes of an episode a day.
What?
So over the course of the 6 weeks holidays, we literally got Arrival from Cybertron. Like, and that was it.
How would you even get into a show like that?
Well, that's it. I was lucky because I got the videotapes. So like my all-time favorite bit of Transformers media ever is War Dawn.
Okay.
Because that was just my favorite episode, and big fan of Optimus Prime and all of that stuff. And of course, that was a double bill with the Key to Vector Sigma. Hence why the Stunticons are like my favorite combiner team. But yeah, so we had it differently. I, for the most part, I'm a cartoon guy, like a Sunbow kid. I didn't really read the comics, but but for people who are slightly older than I am, people who are only a couple of years older than I am, they were heavy into the comic books, and it just so happened that those comic books landed in the lap of people like Nick Roche, James Roberts, and all of the people who, have been making Transformers comic books for the last, how long has IDW held a license now? Like
17 years.
17 years.
Yeah.
So it was huge for us, because Budiansky was only doing so much in the US, and Furman. So the other thing is that American comic books are released monthly. Our comics were released bi-weekly.
Yeah.
So we had to have new stories written.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't really until Furman was asked Budiansky what he was going to do with the 86 characters. And Budiansky basically says, I have no interest in touching them at all. And that's when Furman, put his hands together and was like, right, I'm off to the races now. I can write my own stories. I can play with all of these characters, and I don't have to put them back in the box. I don't have to reset everything. And, that's when Target 2006 and Time Wars and all of that hit, all of these huge stories.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was it. For the UK, the Marvel comics were Transformers for people. So here in the UK, Transformers has been huge. It's just a shame that when it came to the toys for such a long time, we've always felt like the forgotten stepson.
Yeah.
Even going back to the 90s, you guys gave up. Like, Transformers stopped in the US. It never stopped over here. We were getting weird repaints of Japanese exclusive. We got Overlord in the UK.
I know. I mean, that's been the biggest problem for me. I mean, the US did it, and I'm in Canada, so it's I just I lost by association.
Yeah. Sharing the same land mass, that's the problem.
So, but if I saw that you guys were, were getting Overlord, and I was like, why? Just give us the one. Give us the one big one. Come on. And it
that's it.
Obviously never happened.
But this was 1992. Nobody knew what Super God Master Force was.
No.
And to be fair, nobody really cared about Overlord until Nick Roche got his hands on him and gave him lips. But that's just part of the UK legacy, I guess, is that we've had this connection with the brand even more so than I think the US has. I think
it's a lot more fiction. You guys are into the fiction, and that's the thing that's I've always noticed, is that when it comes to UK versus North America, the UK will deep dive into that fiction, and you love it. And in North America, it's much more about the plastic.
Oh, I agree with you 100%.
Yeah,
100%. I went through that period where I bought everything. When I first got back into it, I was buying everything, and it was around the time of the first movie. So I got back into it when Dreamwave hit. So that's like 2001. When the first movie hit in 2007, that was literally the point where I was like, I can't keep buying everything. But I bought most stuff. But it was, when I started paring down my collection and stuff, it was literally buying stuff that was based on characters that I liked or did something interesting in fiction. Nowadays, I've pared my collection down even more but again, it's based on appearances in fiction,
Hmm.
and I think that's absolutely it. I've got one of the things that I've never been able to understand as a fan is the obsession with third party.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, I get it from the concept of you want a really, really cool looking version of this toy.
Yeah.
But generally speaking, when I speak to people who collect exclusively third party, I'm like, well, why are you buying that if you're not going to buy the official stuff? Why are you buying the 17th Masterpiece StuntCon set? Oh, well, I just like the figures. Right, but who's your favorite StuntCon? Well, I don't really have one. I mean, I like this one because it's the best toy. That doesn't compute to me, you know what I mean?
Sure.
I've just, yeah, it's never been a thing that I've been able to grasp, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I
Um,
can maybe throw something on that too. I mean, I buy third party as well as
mm,
mainline, and recently I've noticed that the quality of the mainline toys has dropped. So
mm,
it's not they're not being produced as to the standard that I would want, and
mm,
unfortunately the price has gone up significantly on them,
mhm,
and when that ratio goes in the opposite direction like that, I look and see that third party stuff is still being produced at a higher quality. You know, maybe the price is still high, but it's the quality that I want. I could
yeah,
care less if they call it something different, you know?
mm,
If I put a Optimus Prime on my shelf and I put a leader guy on the shelf next to him, and somebody comes into the room and they say, "Oh, look at your Optimus Primes." I don't correct them and say, "Well, this one's actually leader guy,"
mm,
right? Nobody gives a shit what he's called, right? I don't have to put a nameplate in front of him and say leader guy Optimus Prime, right? Um, you know, you know what he is by looking at him. Um, the I really like the high quality. If I just want a filler character, right, then I'll buy a mainline figure because it is cheaper, right? Um, if I'm buying one figure that has never been produced or is not being produced, then yeah, I will buy a third party figure. I've got the Mastermind Creations Tarn. We've got the rumor that came out this past week that Mainline's producing a Tarn, right?
yeah,
Maybe, right? It might happen, right? Could be next year. But, the Mastermind Creations Tarn, that came out like 7 years ago,
mm,
right? So, was I supposed to wait because Mastermind Creations produced a Tarn 6, 7 years ago? And I was like, well, maybe Hasbro will make one, maybe they won't, but because they didn't, or because they may make one, I'm not going to buy this really cool looking one right now. um you know
I suppose that is one of the advantages of third party as well, though, isn't it? Is, as you say, you're going to get these cuts, but also, even if Hasbro do release a Tarn next year,
yeah,
you're not going to get the rest of the DJD.
likely not, no.
You know, they're never
Yeah,
going to release a Transformer that transforms into a sniper rifle.
I highly doubt it.
You
If
know,
they're not going to do Megatron as a gun, they're not going to do
exactly.
Voss.
They're
Yeah.
not going to release a Transformer that transforms into an electric chair. You know,
No.
it so, from that point of view, I think from a third party's point of view, I can understand the gaps in the collection.
Yeah,
Um, but but most of the time as well, though, it is a masterpiece gap. You know what I mean?
there
It's
are, and then there are the Legends class ones that I've been buying too,
Yeah,
which
they
are
seem to be ubiquitous.
phenomenal,
Yeah,
right? They're the quality of them is amazing.
mm,
Um, this is one I bought like a year ago, and this is from, who's this? I can't remember who made this, but this is leader guy.
Mm.
So, this is my Optimus Prime, and it's a metallic version of him from shit. I think it's might be Magic Square. I can't remember. But I really liked the way it looked, and the
Mm.
quality is amazing, and the scale is insane. So, I spent the money and got it. It came with a trailer, and yeah, he just sits on the shelf and looks awesome.
Mm.
Um, you know, I could care less that he doesn't have, insignias on him. I There's a company that makes insignias. I could
Yeah.
buy a sheet of those and put them on. But frankly, it's about getting something that looks good, right? We're at an age that we can spend the money if we want something to look good.
Well,
The
not anymore. We can't because everything's too damned expensive.
Right. Well, this one is so this is core class Optimus, right?
Mhm.
And this one here is $15 here in Canada.
Mm.
This is, this came with a trailer, and it's bigger, and it's more better quality. I think it might have been $80, right?
Mm.
So yeah, it's a significantly more expensive, right? But the quality is way better, right?
Mm.
So, yeah, I own both, so maybe I'm a hypocrite, but whatever. I like having both of them. The I bought the Studio Cell Unicron, right? Now, at current, time, I do own the HasLab Unicron as well, but Jeremy has it in his possession, because I couldn't ship it to my house due to the pandemic. So I've never actually put hands on it, and so Jeremy's had it for like 2 years. But when I go to TFCon, I'm going to try and sell it. So we'll see if I can move it there. But
I mean, how much are they going for these days?
almost $2,000. So yeah, but frankly, I look at my Studio Cell, which sits next to me here on the desk. It I like the look of it better than the HasLab one. Yeah, HasLab's like 27 inches tall. It's massive, right? But is bigger, does bigger make it better? Right? I just
Well, not if you don't have the space. I mean,
Right.
I'm pretty much maxed out on Titans at this point. Like Hasbro, I mean,
Yeah.
no more Titans, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah. So, are you? Do you? For you, is buying a figure about completing a collection, or is it about obtaining like a character that you really like?
So
Because I see a lot of G1 in the background, but I don't
yeah.
see any like Cybertron or Cyberverse or anything like that.
So I have a G1 collection that
Mhm.
I'm over 300 figures deep into.
Okay.
And I'm trying to complete that line. The North American collection of G1 anyway.
Okay.
And I do have some pieces that are outside of that. Like I have a lot of the UK Europe, European 1.5s, whatever,
Mhm.
and stuff like that. So, but that's the main line that I'm trying to complete. Everything else is just, I like this figure, it's cool, so I'll buy it. I have a lot of figures that are are one-ofs, or I've got a lot of Thrilling 30 and stuff like that. I don't
Mm.
generally go into things and say I'm going to get this whole line. I just buy them to get them. I have a lot of what were considered chug, right? So
Yeah.
the generation stuff,
Generations classics. It's
yeah,
just yeah.
I have a lot of that. And that's but I've really started to get a little bit more focused on what I want to buy with regards to that, because I don't buy a lot of Beast Wars toys, the modern stuff. I'll buy the old ones because I really like the engineering on those, but I
Mm.
really don't buy the modern ones. The So with the new main line being, almost 50-50 Beast Wars to G1, related figures, I'm really not buying a lot of mainline right now.
No, I,
Yeah, and
agreed.
yeah, Cyberverse, I didn't buy any of. The last like kid show orientated stuff I bought was from the most recent Robots in Disguise, and I had to stop myself at a certain point because I was buying almost everything. and I thought I can't buy it all. I had to stop, and so I stopped there and just really kind of focused on the G1s that I was missing, and some kind of like rando, good, just ones I liked and stuff like that. So, but yeah, no, it's just a collection of stuff I enjoy at this point.
I think that's it. Like, I've reached that point now. My collecting goal is a modern, complete run of as many Sunbow related Transformers as I possibly can.
Yeah.
So, for example, the new Stunticon set. I'm totally down for that. I know people were like, "Oh, well, they're not combining like classic combiners. There's not as much fun or playability." I don't care. I want them to look like they do in the cartoon.
Sure.
Like for me right now, going back to what I was talking about before, the idea of Goldbug. It's like, okay, he might be a bit part player in the cartoon, but he is still in the cartoon. The other three in that set, Ransack and all of that stuff, I don't care. Like, I've no love for Ransack. The other two you've just made up on the spot anyway. There's a toy version of Scorponok. Cool. So that's kind of like my collecting goal as it stands at the moment. But again, it's because predominantly I grew up on the watching the Sunbow cartoon. So that's kind of it. And I love everything else. The only other set that I've got, which I'm complete on, which I would never part with, is me animated stuff, because I just love animated. I adore animated. But yeah, so that's Transformers toys.
I have a significant amount of animated as well. I'm missing a lot of those rare ones, like the hard to find, rare ones, but
blackouts and stuff like that.
Yeah, that stuff. Yeah. And I've never really looked for it. I just, if I came across it, I'd pick it up. But
the only animated stuff that I ever parted with, surprisingly, given how much I love the Stunticons, was the BotCon Stunticon set. But that was that was a needs must, like needing needing cash, as we all do from time to time. But fortunately for me, it was one of those things where it was like, hey, it didn't happen in the cartoon, so it's all right. I'm all right.
Did you ever get the was made by a company called Impossible Toys, which is a third-party company, yes, but they made the human characters from animated for just for shits and giggles, just to get. And so you got the police chief, you got Sari, and the father for just
no,
they're horrible. Horrible.
No, hold on a minute. These came out like literally in about 2007, didn't they?
Long time ago. Yeah, so long ago. And I think their only arms, their arms move at the shoulders, and that's it. And they some of them don't stand very well, and
it surprises me, given the recent rise of like 3D printing and stuff like that we haven't seen more of these things. Maybe eventually people will start doing them, but it doesn't surprise me.
They gave them away at a TFCon a number of years ago. There was a bin of them, and they're just like, want some animated humans? And I'm like, I'll take a set. So sure.
Surely there must be a market out there for like, the prime kids, and I'm sure somebody wants in 2022 wants a Kicker figure. I mean, there was one, but it was horrible because it broke.
I've got it.
But is it still in one piece?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
I just showed it off recently. Because I just got it.
Be very gentle with that thing.
Yeah, there he is. Yep. So I just got him with his little motorbike dude. So I was just showing him off on the show.
No, there was a Takara. No, I think it was is that a?
It's from Cybertron, I think. No.
And the character's from Energon, but is there was a Takara one where it was released by itself.
Oh, okay.
And it was terrible. Like, it broke, like it shattered. I don't know why. Bad plastic, I guess, but
likely.
But it didn't come with a motorbike, so I'm interested. I didn't know there was another version of them.
Yeah, I think there's 3 versions.
Yeah. Nobody liked Kicker anyway. Snotty little brat.
But speaking of custom figures and stuff like that, you guys have been producing some, and I mean, it's probably through somebody who does customs, but you guys have had some for TFNation that have been fooling people like me who are idiots into thinking there were some kind of UK exclusive Action Masters that had snuck by my radar, and thinking I was like, how the hell did I miss these? And realizing only after like 4 hours of Googling that they were UK TFNation exclusives, and that there was no way in hell I was going to be able to get one of these.
Yeah,
so,
those aren't actually really anything to do with us. Yeah, we don't actually sell them at the con. They are at the con, but we don't sell them. We have a very, very good relationship with one of our dealers at TFNation called a group of guys collectively known as Toy Fu.
Yep.
And we're a massive supporter of them because Nick, the main guy over at Toy Fu, he spends all year buying toys to sell them at TFN.
Yep.
But all proceeds go to charity.
Yes.
So he doesn't, and so one of the guys that works there, what he does is he loves Action Masters, and so he spends the year just creating weird custom. So people might have seen like his Emirates Zaron.
That's what I saw, and I was like, "What the hell is this? And where can I find it? What happened here?"
So it's weird because people have said before, like, send us messages going, "Oh, can you?" And we're like, "It's got nothing to do with us. Like, they're sold at the convention, but we don't sell them. It's not like it's not a TFNation exclusive. It's exclusively at TFNation." But it really doesn't have anything to do with us. Because just like all Transformers conventions, every single one of us is unofficial. As much as much as certain conventions might want you to think that they're still official, but never mind.
I don't know what you're talking about.
No, my lips are sealed. But
get into that's a really good segue to start talking about this convention you guys are running over there.
Yeah.
And so how many years has it been?
We started in 2017.
And this is a is there anybody that's is this a completely new build from the previous convention?
Yeah, it is. So, bit of backstory. For many, many years, there was a convention that happened in the UK called Auto Assembly.
Yep.
Auto Assembly has been going in one form or another had been going for decades. And it literally started off with a group of mates getting together and having a chat, and it grew and it grew and it grew. It really blew up in 2007, 2008, specifically with the rise of YouTube, because suddenly everybody sort of knew who everybody was.
Sure.
And like I say, it grew. It became the biggest convention in Europe, and then in 2016, if my dates are right, or 2015, one of the two, I can't remember. It's been such a long time now. Simon, who was the organizer of it, basically said he wasn't going to do it anymore, and everybody who really worked with him was like, well, we still want to do it, so we created TFNation, and that's been running, I would love to say, ever since, but unfortunately the world changed in 2020, so we haven't run a convention for 2 years, and now
you took it online, right? So
we did, yeah, absolutely. Well, we realized that there wasn't going to be one, and we were kind of just like, well, let's just do one online then. And it was supposed to be like the original pitch that we had was that it was going to be like 3 hours, and it was just going to be like a thing for people to hang out with. And it turned out to be like 12 hours. And it was huge, and we had all these great connections with people, and it was just a lot of fun. Yeah. So we did that. So we did we did the convention in person for several years. Then we took it online for 2 years, and now we're finally coming back in August. I mean, we're like 45 days away or something like that from it.
That's amazing. I mean, I'll you guys got to be so excited. You probably feeling this very similarly to me, because we've got as we're talking right now, we're sitting at just under 2 weeks from TFCon. So and I'm not an organizer, so I mean I'm feeling no pressure. I'm just attending. So
Yeah.
It's less pressure for me. But yeah, it's going back to a convention is just it feels great to get back in those rooms again, right?
It's seeing people who you've not seen in several years. You know, one of the big things about TFN, and I don't know about TFCon. I've only ever been to one American convention, and that was BotCon. But you know, we thrive on our community. Like, we thrive on the fact that you know that you're going to go see your friends for 3 days. You know, Transformers for a lot of people is quite secondary in the grand scheme of it. They go, they buy toys, they play with toys in the bar and all of that stuff. But you know, if you've got Transformers friends that you haven't seen in a couple of years, then chances are that's what you're going to TFN for. And so it's super exciting because you get to see these people, and then you get to indulge in, you know, these giant hobbies. As an organizer, it is terrifying, however, purely because, you know, it has been 3 years now. It'll be 3 years since we last ran a convention, and you don't know whether or not you've still got it anymore. You know,
I'm sure you do.
Oh, I'm absolutely positive I do, but you know, it's several years.
You get
older.
It's those butterflies every time they get close, right? You're like, is it gonna happen? Is anything gonna happen just before? Yeah, you get a little butterfly.
Yeah. And we've carved a niche out for ourselves in regards to what we do at the convention, which is unlike what happens with others. And you know, in 2019, when we did the last one, you know, we did the season 4 script reading of Transformers Animated.
And that was pretty well received, I heard.
Yeah. Well, that was it. It was, you know, that was such an incredible thing to happen. You know, we love animated. Like, I adore animated. I still think it is the last great thing that Transformers has done. Like, truly exceptional. And that's not to say that Prime wasn't good or anything like that, but animated was just my jam. And you know, for us to be able to do that and to let people see this for the first time ever, and then to have, you know, Marty turn around and say, well, let's just get the original cast back together for it and stuff, and you were just like, all right. You know, to be able to do that and to keep it as a surprise was fantastic. So to be on stage when the audience suddenly realize that this script reading of Transformers Animated isn't going to be just a bunch of people pretending to be, but it is actually David K. It is actually, you know, and suddenly my mind is drawing a blank, but, you know, Tom Kenny and all of these guys. And then, you know, for us to get Corey, you know, which then led into the following year when we did the first big broadcast, and I got to sit down and interview Corey Burton, you know, and I'm like, I'm talking to Corey Burton, you know, holy crap, this guy's a legend.
Yeah.
You know, that was fantastic. And the problem is always trying to figure out how you're going to top it next year. In some ways, I'm kind of glad that that COVID slowed us down a little bit, so we didn't have to worry about trying to top that.
Yeah.
But if you're interested and you're in the UK, you really want to come along to Saturday night, because, oh boy, have we got something special lined up.
Oh boy.
Oh, we have found something nice. Yes, yes. So, but yes. So, it's great. It's a lot of fun. We really, you know, every single person that helps out and runs that uh, is a fan. Um, and we do it for the community in the UK. It's just a shame that you know COVID slowed the momentum, and then the cost of living and things like that has become such a horrible thing for people at the minute, because it is a struggle for a
Mhm.
lot of people, and the idea of having to you know sacrifice what you love just to be able to pay your bills and stuff, and not be able to come, it's a concern, which is part of the reason why we've, as you mentioned right at the beginning of this, set up this mini con where we're going to try and do smaller shows throughout the UK, in different cities, so that people don't necessarily always have to travel. Um,
I
and
think that's a great idea, actually, too.
yeah, it
Yeah.
is. We obviously we don't have the land mass that America and Canada have, so there is no sense in doing a TFNation 2 somewhere else,
Mhm.
because it's we're not that big a country, but we can do these smaller day shows
Sure.
around the country, and give people the opportunity to see their friends again. So
Yeah.
yeah, so we've got a lot going on this year. We've got guests, we've got comic book guests, we've still got guests that we haven't announced yet, and we've got a really cool thing that's going ahead with Royal Mail, which is one of our postal services. We've got some exclusive stuff, which is official, which you will see for the very first time at TFN. Yeah, I'm super excited.
That's very cool. So, let's who you've got, who have you announced so far? Let's go over
So
that.
yeah, in terms of our guests, we've had like quite, it's always a funny one with TFNation, because you know most of the time when you talk about guests and things like that, it's always about who's available,
Mhm.
and most of the time we're talking about people who are coming from the US.
Yeah.
So just to give you our big guests, sorry, I should have got a drink before I started this. So the big guests that we've got lined up for this year is Gary Chalk,
Okay.
and Lindsay Rousseau, who obviously played Alita 1, and Gary Chalk obviously played Optimus Prime and Optimus Primal.
Mhm.
Um, we've also got Brian Holfield and Nicole Dubeck, who are they were the showrunners on Rescue Bots,
Okay. Yep.
and wrote for Transformers Prime. And Nicole is obviously the showrunner on the lead showrunner on Earthspark, the new show that's coming out.
Oh, yes. Yep.
So we've got those coming over as well. So we're very excited for that. I'm a massive fan of Rescue Bots. I think Rescue Bots is hilarious. And we've got again something very special about Rescue Bots that people won't have ever seen before, and I'm very excited because I get to see all of this stuff beforehand, and I'm like, "Oh, this is amazing! I need to tell people," and then I'm like, "But I can't. I must hold it in." But then we've also got Andrew Wildman is coming along, Jack Lawrence, Jim Sorensen, John Paul Beauvais, Nick Roach, Matt Ferguson, and we've also got Andy Cousins, who used to work for Hasbro UK back in the 90s, and he's going to be talking us through how the UK ended up getting characters like Overlord and things like that. So
That will be
peeling the
very
curtain a little,
interesting.
yeah. So, and then as I say, we've still got more characters, more people to announce as we get closer to the time.
That's fantastic. So that sounds like a great show. Yeah, there's some people who come to TF Nation that just have never been able to make the ride over to North America here for shows that I've been able to attend,
Mm.
and I get super jealous. You know, you guys have had people like Guido Guidi, and I'm in awe of that man's talent,
Yeah.
and I've really wanted to meet him and stuff like that. So yeah, you guys have the ability to have guests, and Simon Furman's made his way over a couple times, but never to a show that I've been able to attend. So I'm very much hoping to be able to you know Simon as well at some point. But you
Mm.
guys got some really great guests here. I've this John Paul Bove, I've heard of him. He's an interesting fellow. I mean, I hope you guys can contain him. So
Oh yes, yes. JP is he's a lovely man. He's an absolutely lovely man.
yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, like it's great, to be able to get all of these incredibly talented people on board. But like, people like Andy. Andy's not a household name. People don't, wouldn't recognize that name. But he's one of those people that we always go off the beaten path. We try to find people who can shed some experience and some light on stuff that we ourselves are, lacking in. We always have, every year whenever we get together to like talk about who the guests are going to be, we always ask the question of who is the Uncle Bob role, and what we mean by that is who is filling the Bob Budiansky role.
Oh, sure.
And Andy fits that bill. He is somebody who is in a unique position to be able to tell people about how this brand came about, or specifically one corner of the brand.
Yeah.
That would be something where, because Andy worked for Hasbro UK, it wouldn't work at a TFCon, sorry. It is exclusive sort of to the UK.
Is, yeah.
But we are quite lucky as well, because going all the way back to those, Marvel comics that we talked about, because they were such a big thing and so instrumental to the fan base, we have access to people like Furman and Bove and Wildman and Roach and Roberts, like all of these people who have become so instrumental in moving the brand forward. And they live on our doorstep, for the most part. So
yeah, they're right there.
We're quite lucky.
Well, I think we should probably wrap it up. We've had a wonderful chat here, and I've probably kept you way longer than I should have, but
not at all.
I think we should do this again at some point, because I think we could talk comics for quite some time.
Yeah, exactly. I feel a bit bad, actually. Like, I know it's Transformers podcast, but like, what, 45 minutes of this hour and a half was all comic books, so I do apologize.
That's okay.
But yeah,
no, that's good. I'm very happy that we were able to find another commonality between us, something else that we could chat about. And discussing DC versus Marvel kind of stuff is always very fun. But David, I want to thank you very much for coming on and talking to me today about what you do over there and putting TF Nation together. It's wonderful what you do, and we sit here over at Transmissions in awe of what TF Nation is, and really super jealous because we want to go. We really do.
Well, it's only about 6,000 miles, so like there's
I'll
no
get
excuse.
paddling.
Yeah, exactly. That's it.
Yeah.
So, I appreciate the invite, and I've had a great conversation. I'm very much looking forward to coming back. And we'll definitely make that happen.
I think we should. All right. Well, you have a wonderful rest of your day, and we will be talking to you very soon.
All right. Thanks very much, everyone. Bye.